So we made a 0.1 point release for the GitOps toolkit last week. We want to thank everyone that tried it out, fixed the docs. Yeah, we had some issues, of course. We did a patch for the Helm controller. There was an issue where no matter what namespace you'd specify to deploy the actual release in the same namespace as the controller, and that was fixed. So if you see that issue, please update the CLI, then run install or bootstrap again, and the controller will be updated, and that problem should be fixed. There are a couple of new things. We are now allowing you to specify ARM as an architecture. So before we released ARM 64, looks like that's not quite ready for Raspberry Pis. So we've pushed also ARM v7 ARM v7 images. So when you do install or bootstrap, you can say arch ARM or ARM64 or AMD64, which is the default. And based on the architecture that you are specifying at bootstrap or install time, we set for each controller a node affinity. So if you run, let's say your cluster is made out of multiple nodes and each node has a different architecture, when you install it, you have to choose what architecture you want to install the toolkit for, and it will pin on those particular nodes. So we do support a cluster that has mixed architectures. Other things, the current alpha APIs have been removed, and we promoted the API version to v1 beta 1 and v2 beta 1 for the Helm release. And we'll be working on migration guides for Helm operator users. Why we are doing this first for Helm operator is because in November Helm v2 goes end of life, and as you know, Helm operator depends on Helm v2. Tiller has dependencies on the Helm v2 packages. So if, I don't know, CVEs or problems will arise in the future, we'll not be able to fix them. And our decision is to put Helm operator in maintenance mode, focus on moving users to Helm controller and Helm release version 2 until Helm version 2 goes end of life. And yeah, that's about it.
Cool. Thanks, Stefan.
Thank you.
Scott, do you want to take over and tell us about community efforts and governance? Oh, can't hear you.
Hello, now?
Yep. Okay,
okay, great. Hi. I think I look a little dark on screen, but hopefully you can see me. My mic doesn't work so well with Hangouts, with Google Meet apparently, or my video doesn't work so well with that. So there is a doc, and I'll post it in the notes, or I'll post it in the chat first of all. Okay, thanks. As well as in the. Sorry, I'll post it in the chat, as well as in the notes, or maybe if someone else could post this in the notes for me, that'd be great. Where you can see the current branch for this pull request. Also posting in the notes. The basic idea is that for Flux to show that its next step in maturity, both for the CNCF, but also just so that there are some processes by which the community knows how to move ahead properly, so there's no confusion. And to accommodate its growth, we need a set of governance processes and definitions. So that's it. That's this. So far, there's been a lot of really good feedback. I added a table of contents to the top to help explain some of, hopefully, how people can quickly navigate to reading this. I hope it doesn't require explanation, just like any governance doc should not. If it does, then it should be modified so that it's clear to the user upon entry. For people who have participated in the conversation so far, I should just update the changes that I did make, so you don't have to shuffle all of that in your mind right now. One of the big changes was the change to, initially when I defined teams, I tried to keep basically some, how do I say it simply? I introduced the concept of teams, which by default, maybe, or in reality, many CNCF projects do in fact use. Sometimes they map to the sub-projects that are listed, or the projects they sometimes call them in their governance doc. Sometimes some projects do have specific teams listed, just not necessarily, they don't necessarily align with the teams that are in GitHub, and that can sometimes get very confusing. So that's why I tried to be explicit about that. I also didn't list sub-projects or projects because I tried to keep the teams relatively simple in that the actual development, the software development or the code development is at this point one team. The community is one team. There's also a separate, or community management rather, there's also a separate security team. And then an organization team, the top level team, which is important for decision escalation. I think the community always has something like that. Sorry, the community always has something like that. Whether there's just whether say in the Prometheus project, there's just simply a team, and then there are maintainers as a separate level. People just have different terminology for it. So I tried to pick something that was more in line with the tool that we're using, which is GitHub. So I hope that's helpful. The change that I made last was I initially said that members must be, let's see, part of a team, but that the dev team was scoped pretty highly. It was able to administer, create, delete, and everything, any Git repo. So what I did was I moved that to the org team. That was the last change that I made. So that if we do need more Git repos, someone from the org team should make that decision based on the comments. Some members of the dev team will also be on the org team, so that shouldn't be a problem. And I made clear that, sorry, let me just, at the top of the dev team list, I made clear that dev team members are scoped to one or more source code repositories where they'll be listed in the maintainers file in the root of that repo. So if you just want to read that part, see if you think that, at your own time, on your own pace, at your own pace, if you think that that sounds right or if it reads well. The main point was we could either split that dev team into separate, very clearly defined teams. But at this point, it seems like that might be premature because we have some maintainers that only work on one repository. And then we also have some concepts of sub-projects, maybe the possibility of a Helm team and a customized team. But that's not really fully defined yet. So I thought that if we just stick with the maintainers file for now, we could do what we're doing now and still keep a good first step for governance. So I hope that helps give you all an overview. Please let me know what you think. And this is completely subject to change. It's just was my best first attempt.
Excellent. Thanks, Scott. I think on the, can we comment now on the governance? Or
Absolutely.
excuse me. In terms of individual product maintainers, I think the best idea is just to not disturb that, and be clear that the community, the overall governance stuff is not taking anything away from that. It's just overall. So as long as that's how it works, more or less, I think we're kind of fine on that.
TLDR, high level, is I believe that it should now say that. The only difference is that it does make explicit how members get to be listed in those maintainers files. And at the moment, I just said that it should be a simple majority of the existing members of those maintainer files. I don't know if that sounds right to you all, or if you want to say that that should be the discretion of the org team for now, because that's kind of de facto how it works now. We just have an undefined org team, kind of just the group of people. Whatever you think would be best there, maybe just have a look through that one piece and see if you think it reflects what we have now.
Yep, I shall do.
Okay.
Yeah, I think the main idea is to allow people to contribute to a project without taking everything in. Like, let's say you want to contribute to Go Git provider, you want to implement Bitbucket support, but you don't want to take into, I don't know, maintain a role for the whole Flux organization. So we should allow people to be maintainer for a particular project without giving them a bunch of responsibility. And if they want more responsibility, of course, that's great. We can make that happen, add them to the dev team, give them more reach towards other projects that are interested. But especially with the GitOps Toolkit, where we have these specialized controllers, each are doing its own thing, I hope this will also drive an uptick in contributors, because I don't know, if you are interested in, I don't know, only Git operations, you could focus your attention to source control, and if you only want to do that, you can do it. You don't have to touch the whole thing. That's my hope.
I think it says that now. The only slight difference to what you said is that in the way it's written at the moment, those people, even if they're scoped to a specific repo, like say the Go Git providers repository, and that's the only thing those members are going to work on, they would still be a member of the dev team. They would just be scoped to a specific repo. So every dev team member would be scoped to one or more repos. Some people may actually be maintainers of all of them. Some may be only one. But that would also mean that their profile on GitHub would list Flux CD organization as them being a member of that org too.
No, that's opt-in. So by default, when you join an organization, your membership is private, so it doesn't show up on your GitHub profile. You have to change it. So from that perspective, not worry.
I said that incorrectly, Stefan. I am aware of that. I just wanted to say that that is an option for those people, given the way it's currently written right now.
But I don't know, maybe so in a way that a maintainer for a particular repo has to be in the dev team. This is what you're saying?
Yes, I mean, well, we don't necessarily have to, but if you want, we could continue to have people just listed as outside collaborators instead of being part of that team. It's really, I suppose that's really up to you all. If you want to make that change, we can. I was just trying to keep it simple. I don't have, again, I'm not trying to overcomplicate it. It's just more like, I think the idea was that it would be clear which part of the Flux project certain people worked on, and that they should be given credit for that part, whatever it is.
What if it would introduce a third group?
What?
A third group. something like, I don't know, project maintainer group or whatever, and it's just scope to people who aren't fully working from a full range dev perspective on Flux and its components, but are part of the bigger whole, just not on everything like we are, for example.
Okay.
Yeah, so for now, what I did was to change the, just so you understand the change that I just made, the last commit that I pushed, not
I've
the type.
seen it.
Okay. Well, then what my intention was there was to say that being part of the dev team did not by default make you a maintainer of all of the things, just that you could then be a maintainer of one or more of the things.
How does that change the procedure we do today? So today, if someone, let's say, makes a couple of pull requests to a particular project, we ask him, hey, do you want to volunteer as a maintainer? We value your contributions and so on. And that person said, yeah, I want to be a maintainer. And what we are currently doing, we are going into that specific repo admin section, and we add that person as an external contributor, and we label it as we give it maintainer access. This is how we do it today. And then that person adds itself, makes a pull request and adds itself to the maintainer file. The current maintainers approve that change, gets merged, and then it's also official, but also has all the rights that the maintainer has. How is this proceed? How does this procedure changes with the dev team? We have to invite it first to your org. They have to accept the invitation. Then I cannot add the dev team as a maintainer, so I still have to add it as an external maintainer. So it's just, there are two more steps. One, it has to accept to be a member of the org.
No, because you can do them in parallel.
Correct. Yeah. So you're both correct with Hida's slight adjustment. Yes, that's right. And the only reason for that is so that if someone wants to see who all of the maintainers are, they can just simply look at that team. And by accepting membership in the org, you are accepting the overall responsibilities that all maintainers should have. That was the only real difference. Otherwise, it's exactly the same.
It's easier also from a governance perspective. If you want to move permissions later on, you can assign permissions to a certain group.
Right.
Okay.
So that's why I made that note that if we do, as we go through this process, if we do have a clearer understanding of which separate teams would be best, what we could do then is we could, just split that dev team into separate dev-related teams that are specific to, one or more repos, and then just remove those outside collaborator level and just purely use the team for managing access, like you said, Stefan.
What happens if that particular person doesn't accept the invitation but keeps contributing and it's in the maintainers file, but doesn't accept the to join the Flux org?
I don't know. I don't know. It's hard to envision that one, but I suppose it's possible.
I get invited to a bunch of organizations that I never approved. So
what I would do honestly is I would just test.
They miss it. I don't know.
I think that's really funny. I honestly don't know. I would say that's maybe that would be kind of up to the org team to decide how to escalate that. If we really think that someone is just saying, hey, I don't want to join because I don't really want to adhere to the code of conduct, and I don't really care about the rest of this governance, I just want to write code, then maybe we should say, well, we do want your code, but sorry. I don't know. But that would be, I think at that point, the governance doc says that all matters like that are the org team can handle any escalations. But if it's not really a big deal and it just kind of is just more of a process thing, then I think, again, that can be the org team to decide that.
Yeah, I guess for the people on the call, the governance doc changes something on how you would contribute to Flux from this point on after we merge it. And the change is you must sign your commits. You must sign off your commits. So you are not obliged to sign your commits with a PGP key. you only have to add the -s flag to your Git commits and add there the sign off with your email. And we'll be enabling a GitHub bot that will check all the pull requests, and it will tell you that if you missed a commit or not, and it will tell you what commands to run in order to sign off that particular commit that doesn't have the sign. So that's going to change for the current contributors.
Very good point. And if you would like, I can share some snippets to help with that sort of thing. I know everyone here on the call is capable of finding this out themselves, but
That's the lowercase s, right?
Correct. Yeah, lowercase s or -- sign off. And I also I just want to note there is there are other tools. For example, I also, in order to accommodate the Helm and other teams, I wrote a fun GitHub UI tool that has a Chrome and Firefox plugin. So when someone is making committing suggestions, code suggestions that other people make, or creating a simple PR in the web UI, GitHub's web UI, it also adds your configured commit sign off. And just to note that in case someone doesn't realize this, GitHub's if you're using your anonymous GitHub email option, you can use that for your commit sign off too. The main thing is all the DCO bots that check, just make sure to check that your commit email matches your sign off email. That's really it. So
we had many doc fixes, for example, made by people through the UI, and I'm guessing all those pull requests will fail from this moment on.
What we generally do in almost all of the CNCF project repos, because as Chris said, either DCO or another option, another licensing option is required for CNCF projects. It's mostly a due diligence thing. There may be something that, especially from earlier on, we don't necessarily have to go back and rewrite all of Git history. It's more just once you actually implement this in place and you do your due diligence and you do your very best to make sure that those are there, usually we add a DCO bot that checks on every pull request. So if someone does make a pull request through the UI, it'll just fail, and then we'll say, hey, the DCO bot actually gives you instructions on how to fix it for each user. So it's pretty easy at that point.
Yeah, but you cannot do it through the UI.
No, that's why I made that plugin to help people. It doesn't help you once you've already messed up, but we can at least, we could promote that through the maintainers and through the dev list if you would like. That's something that we've done for the Helm team, as well as a snippet that people can add to their, ZSH RC or their bash RC, or bash profile or whatever, that just automatically signs off all of their commits. I personally do that, but it's really up to each user. I think we can just find ways to make it easy on them.
Yeah, I propose after we merge the governance and everything it's set, we should set an email or, write a doc somewhere and with all this stuff, like, okay, you have to do the sign off in this way. We'll enable this bot that will guide you if you are doing a mistake. If you only want to use the UI, then you have to install this plugin, which is here, and check the DCO box. So
well, I'm just adding that note to our meeting notes.
Oh, you on video?
I am. Okay. Should we set a time frame for people to allow people to, a reasonable time frame for people to comment on the governance docs before we, not that we're ready to commit it right now, but should we, since we have people on this call, what do you all think? Should we say, you know, please add your thoughts within the next week, or?
Yeah, I would say by next Friday.
Okay.
It's reasonable. I don't think our governance doc changes much from a contributor perspective, except for the sign off. And it's not like we can remove it from the governance doc since it's required by CNCF. So
yeah,
that's it.
Okay.
So are you thinking, Scott, that it is approved if nobody says anything within a week?
Yeah.
Any issues with it? That's the plan. Lazy consensus kind of thing.
Yeah. If no one raises any concern on the pull request, then we'll merge it and enable the bot and communicate to everybody that that's going to happen.
Cool. Okay. Thanks.
Okay. I listed those as comments in our meeting notes. So I think probably to be fair to everyone, it may be good to repeat that note in the CNCF Flux channel. Yes, thanks. As well as, do you all think that the dev mailing list is also appropriate to give people the week to comment?
Yep.
Okay.
All the channels we have, I think.
Okay. Okay.
I think we should have a cooling off as well. So once the week is up and people have made the comments and changes have been made, we should have like a week of just letting it sit there, basically. Like, as in, here's the draft not being actively changed, but you know what I mean?
You mean before committing?
Yeah.
Okay.
So the reason is that you can quite easily sort of comment on something and it gets changed and then not realize that it gets changed to something else later on. So you kind of need that, like, here is the almost final thing. Anyone have any last things about it? And then maybe we would need to go through another round, hopefully not. But
it's up to you all. Honestly, I think it should be more up to the current maintainers than someone like me who's like very new. You know, to know what's best for the community, what's best for.
yeah, I mean, I don't think it's so urgent that another week will hold anything up. Anyone else want to comment on the cooling down, cool off, whatever it is?
Okay, so then 1 week for change comments, one final week for I guess final thoughts.
Yeah.
Okay. And also, you know, I just want to make clear too that, you know, these docs, you know, the idea isn't that they're changing constantly. However, they are always subject to change, you know, in the sense that if someone does have an issue, let's just say, Michael, I just want to kind of throw this out here before we tack on an extra week 100%. You know, like, let's just say we do say it's committed next Friday after all issues have, assuming all issues have been addressed and consensus can be reached. At that point forward, additional thoughts people may have can still be added. The only difference would be that there would be a team whose job it is to mull over and make and consider and then make those changes. So, you know, part of this would be deciding who's going to be on these teams. I have a feeling that everyone on this call probably knows who those people are. I have an idea who they may be, but you probably all have the best idea, you know? So I just want to throw that out there as saying, it's not as if it's kind of final set in stone. We don't really draft them and then publish a draft like V1, V2, and then link to them. It's always kind of whatever's at the tip of master or at main, you know? So, so I don't know if that kind of helps you feel like it's not required to have another cool-off week, or if you still think we should, given that.
I still think we should, because we're going from having no governance effectively to having something, and there is kind of it's worth trying to get it right as much as possible. So, you know, it might be that all the changes come in on the last day, and then the next day someone goes, oh, wait a minute, if we give those people that power, they can just blow up the whole thing, or whatever it is, you know. So
sure,
it's worth having a period where all the changes have come in and it's frozen, and you decide, is this what we really want?
Okay.
Yeah, I just have one question, Scott. Is this based on like pre-existing documents that have been used by other organizations over the past year? So it's pretty much been tested by other groups.
So yes and no. Every part of this has been tested by other groups, but no, there is actually no template for this. So
Okay.
yeah, in fact, CNCF explicitly states that they do not require specific parts of the governance document. They just require that a community has one. So what I did, however, is I went through, well, let's see, I wrote it here, and I actually removed all this context in the description of the pull request because I realized that I was trying to keep the doc simple, but then as I was writing all of the context, it just made it more confusing, probably, to people who just want to look at the governance like straight out. So if you do want to go back to the first revision of, there's only 2 revisions. One is where I added the context, and the second was where I stripped it out saying edit. I removed the context just to keep it simple, but you can always look at the first revision. And basically that says, so far, this is a culmination of conversations with Chris A. from CNCF, with some conversations I've had with maintainers of several other CNCF projects, my own experience so far with things I might have wanted to see different in retrospect for Helm, as well as synthesizing what I thought were the useful parts of every other governance doc from every other graduated CNCF project. And I only focused on the graduated ones because while Flux is just about to get into being voted on or whatever for the incubator phase, it's probably good to start out because Flux, I think, is a bit more mature and already probably should be an incubation, honestly. That this will just help us, you know, and help get us off on the right foot by trying to avoid the pitfalls that have happened and the confusing language and other weirdness, you know, that's part of other governance documents. And maybe we can be a good kind of template for other future projects.
Yeah, it's great. Thanks for doing this work to pull all that intelligence together.
No problems. Yeah. And also, you know, through conversations with all the rest of the team, too. That's the other thing, is that I'm learning a lot about what Flux as a project needs based on, you know, conversations with Stefan, Michael, and Hida, you know, and others.
Yeah, echo Chris's thanks as well. Thank you for putting all this time in, Scott.
Absolutely.
Shall we, I think, unless there are more comments on governance, I'm not sure if there's more stuff on the published agenda. Let me look. We could just open the floor. Open to the floor. One of those. Okay.
The
Yeah.
only thing that I wanted to add was just that we have a walkthrough with Lee Capili on October 19th. He's going to be going through the GitOps Toolkit guide live. So if anyone wants to join that, that's going on. And the link is there.
Cool. The link's in the meeting notes?
Yes.
Brilliant. Thanks, Stacey.
Yeah, Stacey. Yeah, go, Kingdom.
I have a question about Flux v1 and new features. I understand it's in maintenance mode, but I don't know if, other than Michael, who saw my mention about the image pull secrets from the namespace default service account. I'm going to try to build that. I'm not. This is not asking for handout. I just was wondering if the disposition would be to merge that if it was presented for Flux v1.
I think so. We're pretty much looking at stuff on a case-by-case basis. So there's a backlog of PRs, all of which have some merit, of course. Some of them kind of haven't been looked at all for different reasons, or haven't been merged anyway. Going forward, we're not going to add. The freeze means when we are not looking at sort of adding new things. Kingdom, your proposed change is, I wouldn't call that a new thing. So
you said it was kind of like an oversight.
Yeah, I think it was an oversight. So just to explain for everyone else, this is when Flux is scanning for images, it tries to look up credentials for repos. And one thing it does is looks at service account that a workload is using and gets credentials from there if it can find them. But it doesn't do this if you haven't specified a service account and are just using the default service account. But it is a completely reasonable thing to do to put your credentials on this default service account for a namespace. So yeah, it's somewhere between an oversight and a straight out bug. I will have to think about it, Kingdom. Is that okay?
I don't know if it's necessary. It's just something that would make there's facilities for copying from one service account to the rest, and would make my YAMLs a little bit simpler if I could do that. It would be just as good if we can accommodate that in a GitOps toolkit, and I move to that. I'm open to that.
Okay. Yeah, let's.
But I'm going to try to add the feature myself. So
okay,
it's an experiment because it's not strictly necessary. You can put it on the.
Yeah. Effectively, what we're trying to do is sort of rate limit. Put a reasonably strict rate limit on how much we're spending on Flux v1. So, obviously critical stuff and security issues, we have to examine those. And then beyond that, we're just trying to keep a sort of trickle of stuff coming through. So where it sort of makes sense. So that's why I say it's a case-by-case basis.
Cool.
Yeah, so lots of slightly tricky decisions to make there.
Yeah, and I think in Flux v2, the image update component will be very different from what's happening today. We'll not be scanning all the images in your cluster by default. We'll not search for service accounts and pull secrets from there. You have to be explicit. You'll have to say, I want to update this image. Here is the authentication for that. And in a way, you could have different, tokens or different users that are connecting to the registry, and you could create one particular for the image update feature. and give that access to all your application repositories with only read-only access, right? So you could have a, let's say, I don't know, a specific service account, and you bind to that service account all these read-only access for maybe even different clusters. Due to the toolkit now, we will not be running the reconciler. Is not the same thing as the daemon that connects to container registries, and it's not the same thing with the controller that writes back to Git. There are three separate things. So you could think that you could run, for example, the image scanning and patching on a dedicated cluster, and you do that on the cluster. The images don't have to be on the cluster. You don't have to have pods deployed there. You just run these two services, and they will create patches wherever you tell them, right? And they will write back to Git. And from there, your whole fleet, maybe you have like more than one cluster. All these clusters will be updated to the last thing that is in Git, right? There's the idea of the toolkit to break apart all this stuff that was in Flux, so you can run it independently and maybe have a better way of dealing with image updates. What we are seeing today is that the registry SaaS vendors are increasing their rate limits. With Docker Hub, you have to have authentication. It will no longer work to let Flux scan all your cluster and connect to Docker Hub without authentication, because every layer pool is one request. And if you have like a couple of containers, Flux V1 running on a particular cluster that connects to Docker Hub unauthenticated will hit the rate limit. And the rate limit is based on the IP, so your whole cluster will be rate limited, right? So it gets like really critical, and with the toolkit, we want people to be able to better manage who connects with what connection for what images. Will not make this default or like it was before. It will be opt-in. You'll have to choose, I want to update this particular images with this particular authentication. And about that, Michael has a pull request open on how you can annotate. Annotate is the right word, is not. You can add a comment.
Yeah, mark. I
Right.
guess. Put markers in files. Yeah.
So it's a
to do it today, but we'll have to wait until next meeting.
Yeah. So it's a YAML command that you add where your tag is or where your image URL is, and this is how Flux version 2 will know where to patch the particular image. So we'll not have annotations like in the past when you, for example, for Helm releases, it was quite complicated because you had to describe where the tag is in your values, at what you had to give it the whole tree. So if people were doing a typo there, it didn't update it, we didn't know why, it was very hard to debug. Now you can add that particular comment right next to your tag, and it doesn't matter where it is, it will patch it correctly. And I think to trim down so much user support and so much annoyances. Oh, I've set up automation, it's not working, and it's very hard to debug. So if you are interested, look at the pull request. I'm very excited about this approach, and this approach will replace the Flux V1 current approach, where you modify your deployment spec in order to be able to patch it. And we are also thinking of other ways on how you can describe what things you want to patch based on, I don't know, label selectors or stuff that allow you to change things without owing or modifying the actual YAML, to allow more things to happen. Like when there are several teams and one team owns the YAML and you own only the customization and use a remote base, maybe you want to patch only that customization.yaml file and change there the tag and so on. So there are more than one use case for that.
Yeah, there's a couple of designs that are given in the, so not the PR, but the discussion that the PR links to about image automation, and both of those are now implemented. One in the PR, and yes, comments welcome. Hopefully, it'll be at a stage pretty soon where there will be some detailed instructions for actually trying it out. There are some, but they don't cover the new thing yet.
Yeah, so going forward, we'll be focusing on covering the image update feature that is on there with what we have in Flux V1, where you actually modify your deployments or your Helm releases, and you specify there, here is the tag, and we'll try to ship that as fast as possible to get at 100% feature parity with what's in Flux V1 right now. And later on, we'll figure out how we can patch things without modifying the files themselves, only through custom resources, through, let's say, label selectors or other means. But the focus right now is on this particular feature. Hey, Chris, I've seen that someone from the DevOps team, Azure DevOps, replied on the issue we had with GoGit, that Azure DevOps is not going to implement the V1 API. So we are kind of stuck. We have to figure out a way forward.
Yeah, I think that one of the preferred discussion approaches now is to think about regops, where we actually use the registry as the endpoint. And the thinking is that registries are they're built actually for the type of scale that would be required. And so I think we're going to have some discussions on that this week, I believe. So that's the current thinking.
In my mind, registries are very close to the S3 bucket implementation. The advantage of a registry is that you can better control the version or express it, because also in a bucket, how we do versioning, we take the whole bucket content, we create a checksum out of that, and that's the version that we apply on the cluster. We tag all the things, we do garbage collection based on that, and so on. But there is no such thing as a semver for a bucket. But with a container registry, you can actually use the tag and enforce semver. Like, okay, we will only look at container registries for manifests that are tagged with semver and drive it from there. It's also something that we want to get in source controller because Helm also will be shipping support. I don't know, Scott, is GA the container registry supporting Helm, or is still experimental?
It's still experimental for now.
Yeah, for now. But in the future, also you'll be able to push Helm charts in the registry, and then we will have to address the registry as a source in source controller, from where you pull Helm charts and why not manifests that are semvered, and then customized controller can do its job the same way it does with the Git repo or with a bucket.
Yeah, I think I think Jonathan's on the call. Jonathan, did you look at the cost of upgrading GoGit to V2?
I didn't have a chance to look onto it much, Chris.
Okay. Anyway, the thinking was that might be too much work, and that just trying to go around DevOps basically and go through a registry approach might be the thing to do. So that's the thinking currently.
Jonathan, can you get in touch with Philip Lane? He's a contributor on Flux V2, and he has a lot of experience with Azure. I think he did a lot of things regional with Git clones and stuff like that. Can you ping me on Slack afterwards, and I'll give you his contact?
Sure thing. Sounds good.
Chris, the red jobs, does that mean kind of making a tarball of configurations and posting them to a container registry, either as a container image or as some other MIME type?
Yep, that's it.
Oh, yeah, that's
it.
interesting. Yeah.
It's like a Helm package in a way, right?
Yeah.
But it's not templated.
Yeah. So if one approach that I was thinking of with, well, in fact, implemented some of with JK is, JK is a like JavaScript engine for generating configs, is to have the tooling work with container images. So you can say, you know, JK run a container image, and it'll go and find the sources inside that container image and generate the stuff. So it's sort of thinking in the same way as if you kind of turn things around like that, then an image which just contains YAMLs is another variety of image with config, right? It's just that there's no generation step. It's just got them right there, and you get versioning and automation.
I mean, I think that would be the next step, Michael, is to figure out what. I mean, a lot of different packages could be supported. This looks like it could be something to come up with sort of a standard type process that developers could be able to depend on. I know that on the GitHub team, Anirudh was starting to look at CNAB, which is something a bundling, a bundling technology, where that would be a tarball, but it would be started with the CNAB sort of structure. But anyway, I think this all needs to be discussed, what this would look like.
Yeah.
And yeah.
Yeah, my main concern with registries, when connecting with them or to them from Go, is the client that does that. It's super heavy. It's from Docker Moby, right, Michael? We had to fork it at some point. We still need to fork, I think.
Yeah, there's others though. You can use, there's a Google Container Registry client, which is a lot more convenient to work with. That's what I use for.
Oh, nice. Okay. So we no longer do a fork of Moby to connect it from the image scanner.
Correct. Think about how the image scanner actually does work. Yeah, I think that's right. I think I've used it for the scanner as well.
Yeah, okay. Yeah, we definitely need to find a client that doesn't pull half the internet when we use it, and that we don't have to fork and maintain on our own.
Those are not ideal properties, that's for sure. Yeah, I think I've used, it's the one that has Crane in it. I can't remember exactly what it's called.
I'll search it.
Yeah, distribution is quite a big repo, it's true.
Yeah, so Helm uses the Docker distribution packages, and if you look at what that brings, it's quite scary. So maybe we find a better way. Okay, so we are using Go container registries.
Yeah, sorry, it's Google open source, but it's called Go Container Registry.
Yes.
Yeah, it's actually pretty neat because it's just written to deal with images, so wherever they are, so you can kind of push them from somewhere and pull them from somewhere else, and not necessarily actually download everything and things like that, and rebase and tag stuff.
Yeah, looks awesome.
Okay, it's just coming up to the top or bottom of the hour, depending on your local idiom. So should we draw a line under this one and see everyone next time?
Yep.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
So long.
See ya.